Welcome to the WRAL Daily Download. I'm Grace Holland. The 2024 election is underway in North Carolina. Voting by mail has just started, and early voting is only a few weeks away. It comes as the FBI continues to investigate threats to election officials in our state and several others. Election security, of course, top of mind for many heading to the polls and those sending in their ballots. WRAL state government reporter Will Doran joins us by phone to break down everything we need to know about absentee voting this year. Will, thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me, Grace. Always good to talk about elections.
Yes, and 'tis the season, of course. Mail-in voting was a big deal in 2020. I remember covering that a lot when I was working in Guilford County. And that, of course, was because of the COVID-19 pandemic. Things are looking more normal this time around. So do we know how many people might cast their absentee ballots in North Carolina?
Yes, things are definitely a little bit back to normal compared to 2020 is for sure. So far, over 200,000 North Carolinians have requested a mail-in ballot. And that's about 1 million people less than at this same point in the 2020 election. So definitely not the rush to vote by mail like we saw in 2020. But at the same time, it's also about 3 times as many people as had been asking for mail-in ballots compared to back in 2016. So it's definitely something that has caught on and has remained popular after 2020. It's just obviously not at the same extent than it was 4 years ago.
Right. And that is interesting that some people have said, you know what, this works for me and how I choose to vote, so I'm going to stick with it for a little bit. Some ballots have already been returned. Who are the people who let me try that again. Some ballots have already been returned. So who are the people who were able to start casting their ballots before Tuesday, and how did they do it so fast?
Yeah, it seems almost impossibly fast since ballots only went out for the first time last Friday, and already by Monday, 102 people had already cast a ballot. And so how do you even do that through the mail that fast? And it's because it actually didn't happen by the mail. I think a lot of people don't know this, but most states, including North Carolina, allow members of the military and other folks who are U.S. citizens living overseas, like military spouses, to actually vote online. And that is so that, you don't have to rely on a foreign government to handle your ballot, get it back to the U.S. to be counted. You can just use this secure portal that they have for those overseas voters. Now, obviously, for those of us stateside, you are not allowed to vote online. You've got to do it with your paper ballot here in the state. But those 102 people overseas have already taken advantage and were the first people to cast their votes in this election.
All right. Well, that's really fascinating. And, you talk about that being a secure portal. Of course, security, very important, both to elections officials and then also to people as they're casting their votes. And there's actually been some changes to the way mail-in voting works this time around in our state. So what do people need to know if they're going to be getting one of these mail-in ballots?
Yes, there are several big changes to the rules. People who voted in 2020, it's going to be pretty different this time. We actually changed the rules in 2020 to make it a little bit easier to vote by mail because of the pandemic. Not only are those rules gone, but we've actually now passed extra rules making it even harder than it had been in the past. One of those is voter ID. This year, for the first time ever, you're going to have to take a photocopy of your driver's license or your other ID that you've got and send that in with your ballots. That might be discouragement to a lot of people if they don't have the ability to copy that. There's also, if you don't have an ID, of course, there are exception forms that you can fill out, and there's plenty of instructions on that on your ballot. But the timing is also something to be aware of this year. If you do go forward with choosing to use mail-in voting, in the past, your ballot could come in up to 3 days after the election and still be counted as long as it had been postmarked on election day. And that was to let people take their full time to make up their mind and then, allow for delays in the mail. Obviously, it takes the mail a few days to get places. That is no longer the case. The legislature got rid of that rule. Ballots now have to be in by the time that polls close on election day. Otherwise, they're going to be thrown in the trash. So if you're voting by mail this year, you need to get it in the mail at least several days, maybe a week prior to the election, just to be safe.
All right, let's take a quick break right there and we'll be right back. Will, before the break, we were kind of setting the scene on absentee voting in North Carolina for the 2024 election. And we'd be remiss if we didn't talk about this federal investigation that's going on with some suspicious packages that were sent to North Carolina boards of elections and then also to some other states. So what do we know about that investigation at this point?
Yes, the FBI is looking into suspicious packages that went to 20 different state board of elections, including here in North Carolina. We talked to Karen Brinson-Bell, who's the top elections director in the state, on Monday about this. She said she wasn't able to give a ton of details because of this ongoing FBI investigation. The important thing is nobody got hurt by this. It's unclear at this point if this was actually a hazardous substance. Obviously, lots of people will remember the anthrax mail attacks from years ago. It does not appear that this was that. This was maybe just something that was meant to scare more than actually hurt people. And she told us reporters, quote, "We will not be intimidated," and that they are going to keep working to do their work of opening the mail, counting these mail-in ballots as they come in, and doing all the other work of elections, even as people maybe try to intimidate some of these workers.
And is there any steps that Bell said that they might take to keep their workers safe, or just extra safety precautions?
Yes, this was caught in the first place because of the safety precautions that they already had in place, but they are going to be doing extra steps just in case those initial safety steps don't work the next time. People are going to now be wearing gloves while they work. And if we're having hundreds of thousands of people mail in ballots to be counted, that's a lot of envelopes for the, county and state election workers to be opening. So definitely want to make sure that all those folks are staying as safe as possible.
And for people who haven't requested their absentee ballot yet, maybe they're still kind of figuring out what they want to do and how they want to cast their vote. Is it too late for them to get their ballot, or if they're not registered to vote, can they still do that?
Yes, still plenty of time to do both of those things. You can wait until October 29th to request an absentee ballot. But the fact that the election is on November 5th, I would actually probably advise against waiting quite that long, since it has to be received back by November 5th. You probably want to not wait until the very last minute to request your mail-in ballot this year if you are planning to vote by mail. As for registering to vote, the deadline for a normal registration is October 11th. However, we have this rule in North Carolina called same-day registration, where you can show up to any early voting polling place in your county and register to vote there, even after that October 11th deadline has already passed. So if you missed that first deadline of October 11th to register to vote, you can still use early voting, the same-day registration, to get it done then.
And when does early voting get started this year?
Just 1 week after that other deadline. Is October 17th is the first day of early voting, and then it'll go out through November 2nd. So from October 17th through November 2nd is early voting, and that's actually the most popular form of voting in North Carolina. Usually about half, if not more, of all voters vote during early voting. So there could be some lines, but if you need to register to vote then, or update your address, update your name, those sorts of things have changed since the last time you cast a ballot. Just bring the documents and you can get it done and cast the ballot same day.
All right. And obviously if you're going to be going to early voting, and if you're going to be voting on Election Day, again, a reminder about those voter IDs. Is there anything else people need to know, if they're going to be going to the polls this year?
Nope, just stay tuned to our elections coverage. We should have candidate questionnaires, and of course we've been covering all of the races, as much as we can here with 40-something days left until the election. Time is ticking, but we will be covering them all throughout the following weeks.
All right, thank you so much, Will, and thank you for listening to the WRAL Daily Download. Another great way to get WRAL news is the Morning Briefing newsletter. It's a daily email that's waiting in your inbox every morning with local news, events, and headlines to get you ready for the day. Sign up at WRAL.com/newsletter.